This is Stephen Wilson, Assistant Director and Curator of the Abraham Lincoln Library and Museum, and this is Abraham Lincoln and the Presidents. Abraham Lincoln was in the White House based on what others before him did. His activities, well, were colored by Thomas Jefferson and Andrew Jackson and folks like James Buchanan. This exhibit, which opens this Saturday, tells us something about the impact that these individuals had on Abraham Lincoln. You have to remember that when Abraham Lincoln was born, the United States had just doubled in size with the Louisiana Purchase. That impact, when Lincoln was just a child basically, was furthered by the fact that now slavery would increase in size and impact and power, and this was the purview of the previous presidents, those before Abraham Lincoln. Probably the president that impacted most on Abraham Lincoln as he entered the White House was James Buchanan. He was known as the old public functionary. He was a man from Pennsylvania, never married, not a man who could make a decision easily, was much more concerned with what people thought of him. As a matter of fact, he was the president when the nation split apart on December 20th, 1860. That is, with the separation of South Carolina. He was also in the White House when the fort at Fort Sumter in Charleston Harbor was in danger of being taken over by Confederate forces. It's an amazing story of Buchanan and Lincoln because Lincoln, of course, being the president-elect, had no power, no authority, no way to influence democracy. That is the democracy of South Carolina and the United States, where Buchanan had at least some power and some influence, but was unwilling to take a chance. At this particular time, in 1860 and 1861, the nation could have fallen apart much more readily, much more quickly than it did. Buchanan was the person who might have at least slowed down the process, but he didn't have, well, the confidence in himself or the backbone to do it. Abraham Lincoln had both, but he didn't have the experience. And when Abraham Lincoln came to the White House and took over the problems of South Carolina and the South seceding and Fort Sumter, it was a confused and convoluted approach to trying to save things. This individual, James K. Polk, is probably one of the best presidents in terms of setting goals and achieving all he wanted to do. He was in office for one term, and that term was so difficult for him that he died just years after he left the White House. Polk was a Southerner. Polk favored slavery, and Polk favored expansion. As a matter of fact, he was president when the United States invaded Mexico and secured California, New Mexico, Arizona, and Nevada. This expansionist policy of James K. Polk was also known as Manifest Destiny. That is, the white people of the United States had every opportunity and a right, as a matter of fact, to take over the lands of what would then be the United States from the Mexicans or the Native Americans. That was the process. So between Polk and James Buchanan, Jackson, Jefferson, Washington, all of these individuals had an impact on Abraham Lincoln. And that's the story we tell about in our exhibit.